Greetings to all Reverend Fathers and honored attendees. It is an honor to be with you today. Framed as intellectual and cultural movement, transhumanism is, at its core, a medical ideology. It offers a false form of healing to address the profound sense of brokenness humanity has experienced since the fall, manifesting in spiritual, psychic, and bodily illnesses. This ideology does not merely promise physical or psychic enhancement, but also offers a path towards becoming godlike by pursuing the qualities of immortality, omniscience, and omnipresence, attributes of God. In this unrealistic pursuit, transhumanism presents a new form of anthropotheosis, the deification of man through artificial means. Such a goal, of course, presents a false alternative to the true aim of Christian life, theosis, achieved through divine grace with Christ as a physician of both body and soul. True healing begins in a nous and leads to full restoration of being, allowing us to become gods by grace and union with God, a stark contrast to the transhumanist pursuit of godlike status through technology. It is no coincidence that the notion of technology possessing salvific qualities first emerged in Western Christianity. In opposition to a traditional view presented by Blessed Augustine, who saw technology as simply addressing the needs of fallen humanity, he of St. Victor, a 12th century Roman Catholic, went further by ascribing religious significance to the mechanical arts. He viewed them as a means of restoring the divine image, directly linking technology to salvation. This concept reappeared in various Western Christian sects, particularly those that rejected orthodox theological understanding of nous, theosis, and salvation as the healing. For instance, Mormonism even established a transhumanist association, envisioning technology as a tool to build godliness. In Orthodox faith, the Orthodox faith is often described as church fathers and as spiritual medicine. Theologian Vladimir Lasky taught that both church fathers and scripture presents Christ's work of salvation through various images, including good shepherd, warrior, diplomat, and physician. Each image contributes to a more complete understanding of salvation, and none should be emphasized at the expense of the other. Neglecting any one of those aspects, particularly the therapeutic dimension, creates a gap that risks being filled by distorted remedies, such as secular therapeutic solutions to spiritual issues or technological interventions that attempt to substitute for true spiritual healing. This concern lies at the heart of this paper. Transhumanism represents a spiritual inversion, introducing a post-secular era that revives a distorted version of religion for post-human objectives. This new value system aims to synthesize the autonomous mind of a scientist with the wild spirit of paganism. Many scholars, including transhumanists themselves, suggest that transhumanism functions as a quasi-religion, or as Julian Huxley, who coined the term, describes a religion without revelation. Although transhumanism often aligns with Enlightenment humanism, which is seen as secular, history reveals that humanism has opened the door to non-theistic spiritualities. Philosopher Peter Guy noted that decline of traditional religious practices during the Enlightenment coincided by resurgence of pre-Christian beliefs like paganism and Gnosticism, which are becoming more prevalent in modern society, signaling the rise of post-secular and spiritual humanism. Transhumanism in this context is a modern embodiment of those pagan and Gnostic values, now presented as trans-spirituality. This form of spirituality seeks, as thinkers like Mike King propose, to create a society balanced between two extremes of atheism and Christianity. Transhumanist Gregory Jordan claims that transhumanism operates as a form of religion providing direction, purpose, and vision of transcendence, much like traditional faith. Though lacking a theistic God, transhumanism envisions the rise of godlike beings with abilities far beyond human limitations, offering a false salvation through transformation into digital entities free from confines of the body and mind. As posthumanist Yuval Harari notes, quote, "We're now aimed to upgrade humans into gods, turning Homo sapiens to Homo Deus." Yet the central dilemma for transhumanism is that achieving the state through artificial means requires a destruction of human essence. Such a radical pursuit can only be embraced when desire to become godlike without God surpasses all else, uniquely possible perhaps for those who adopt psychologized mindset. Over 60 years ago, sociologist and Freud scholar Philip Reeve, warned of the emergence of therapeutic self, a new form of identity he believed would be a final stage of human development due to its inherently self-destructive nature. This new form of self would emerge as society underwent a process of deconversion or apostasy from Christianity, where individuals turning away from God and traditional external authorities, the church, societal norms, and tradition, are shifted their focus towards the self-definition. What Reeve identified as a rising issue in modern society echoes Apostle Paul's warning, where he distinguishes between the man of a spirit and the man of a soul. The latter, as Metropolitan Heracleus Vlachos describes, operates from what might be termed a psychobiological self, governed by the impulses of the self rather than the transformative presence of the spirit. Such a therapeutic self is a psychologized individual, not someone with healthy psychological state, no, but rather someone whose psychological well-being has become an isolated pursuit, detached from spiritual dimensions and eventually from everything outside of the self. Everything outside the therapeutic self, community, government, church, even one's own body, serves merely as a tool for achieving fleeting feelings of well-being and emotional satisfaction. As Reeve famously stated, quote, "Religious man was born to be saved, psychological man is born to be pleased." Reeve argued that this cultural shift was driven by leaders in psychology, who he called psychologizers, due to the influence of liberal individualism as a dominant worldview in a field. This worldview emphasizes the individual self as a central unit of human reality, elevating personal experience and authenticity above traditional religious beliefs and societal institutions. By reducing religious role to mere psychological and moral control, Freud, along with later figures like Carl Jung and Wilhelm Reich, believed that psychology could take on the role of regulating human instincts. Human instinct. Alan Bergen observes, psychology has evolved beyond treating mental disorders to become a means of finding life's meaning, achieving self-actualization, and maximizing personal potential. The development of psychology followed the inevitable historical trajectory, evolving from its early stage in the 16th century to its establishment a formal field in the 19th century. Shaped largely by Protestant Reformation and humanism, psychology became a secular individualistic discipline. This process puts psychology at an increasing distance from orthodox anthropology, which should provide a right framework for understanding relationship between psychological, physical, and spiritual aspects of human life. Instead, Protestant scholastics secularized psychology, detaching it from spiritual sphere entirely. What began in the study of a soul was reduced to the study of a mind and ended up as a study of self. This divergence is why many Orthodox theologians and fathers have raised concerns about the role of secular psychology. The overall Orthodox perspective is not that psychological treatment is always needless, but rather that it's incomplete and potentially misleading if based on false anthropology. And if it contradicts the trajectory of spiritual healing, particularly the healing of a nous, which is central to Christian life, it risks leading people away from true healing of theosis. Psychological healing, therefore, is not an isolated process, but it's deeply connected to both physical and spiritual realities of person's life. Since one's standing with God holds deep significance for one's psychic state, psychology, without Christian foundation, began to expand its reach by offering humanistic solutions to spiritual issues. After Freud, many psychological approaches, including analytical, humanistic, and existential psychologies, evolved into self-psychologies, often open to various false spiritual teachings. As Reeve explained, post-Freudians pursued the purely therapeutic role of religion apart from any once religion system of meaning and theological content. This focus on reinforcing inner desires and satisfaction led to an inward turn to self, where individuals sought self-fulfillment through introspection, shaping a new path for humanity. For example, in an inner conversation, psychologist Carl Jung's soul urged him to reach to a higher level of consciousness and to no longer be Christian, revealing his mission to proclaim a new religion and reorder human affairs. The worldview dominating many psychological schools ultimately guide therapists and patients towards similar conclusions, shaping the modern self. Practitioners who follow specific psychological approach, knowingly or unknowingly, commit to the value-led philosophy embedded in that method, influencing the worldview and life trajectory of their patients. Although the field of psychology has only recently begun to critically examine those underlying assumptions, many psychologists still overlook the fact that their perspectives actively shape and reinforce the prevailing culture of what Reeve called the triumph of the therapeutic. In culture that has reached its triumph, a man not only defines himself, but also reshapes the world based on personal desires. This is a process called expressive individualism, where ultimate goal is self-realization and self-expression free from external constraints. Philosopher Carl Trueman notes that earlier generations would have found this statement of transgender individuals, quote, "I am a woman trapped in a man's body," incomprehensible, as they had not yet embraced the psychologized self, where inner feelings hold decisive authority. Today, in the pursuit of elevating mental distress, such as through gender reassignment surgery, those feelings dictate the body's reality. From my professional experience, psychological field not only influences individual identity, but also pressures practitioners to affirm any self-determined identity, even supporting changes to biological reality. This moral shift stems from the deeper changes in therapeutic ideals, driven by the overarching ideology. As Reeve warned, the psychological view of human nature now dominates, reducing everything to manipulatable sense of well-being. Transgender scholar Martin Ruthblatt questions whether technological advances will stop at transgenderism. Scholar argues that if technology has already dismantled fixed sexual identities, the next step is likely to redefine human identity itself, with transhumanism driving this expansion to the next stage of evolution. Transgenderism is just one precursor to transhumanism. All modern woke ideologies are rooted in worldview that, disconnected from God, the self can be fulfilled through external manipulations. When spiritual identity is lost, it leads inevitably to collapse of psychological identity, which then triggers this disintegration of physical identity. As representative of modern culture lose their identity in Christ, the psychologized self emerges, promoting Reeve's idea that a man can be made healthier without being made better. This concept perfectly encapsulates transhumanism, a false path that diverts humanity from a true healing found in salvation. Though transhumanist future looms closer, our present problem is a triumph of the therapeutic, with the psychological industry subtly spreading the false values of the self, even among Orthodox believers, leading to spiritual harm and deconversion. Many psychologists of Orthodox faith claim to integrate Orthodox principles, yet often merge psychology with theology without proper methodological discernment. In the work on rehabilitating those falling away from faith, we have witnessed the spiritual damage caused by self-centered psychologies, even when applied by therapists who consider themselves orthodox. The growing mental health crisis demands that psychology be grounded in authentic anthropology, one that supports rather than interferes with healing of the nous, which in my work I termed nousology rather than psychology. To conclude, as modern humanity faces the growing danger of being misled by distorted forms of spiritual healing, whether psychological or technological, it is more critical than ever to emphasize the therapeutic aspects of Christ's salvific work. They are often overlooked. All other forms of treatment must ultimately conform to them. Only by aligning with them can one be supported on the path of theosis and be guarded against temptations leading towards its transhumanist inversion of the therapeutic self. Thank you for your attention.